So welcome to session number 3 of Recruiter Fuel. I'm excited that you're here with us today. We're going to build upon what we started talking about last week, and that's this whole idea of recruiting in a post-trust era. Candidates know more about you as a recruiter than you know about them because of the advent of social media. What happened in the economy in 2008, 9, and 10 has had an incredibly lasting effect negatively on the way candidates actually interact with recruiters. The question becomes, what do you do? How do you engage with them differently today than what you did in the past? And it comes down to the basic premise of communication. And really, as recruiters, as salespeople, there's 3 ways that we primarily communicate. And that's by declaring, by debating, or by having real dialogue. The question is, how do you communicate? How were you trained to actually communicate? How were you taught? Most of us as recruiters, when we were taught to recruit, has actually been to tell, to try to persuade somebody through the art of telling. Unfortunately, because of what happened in the post-trust era, that doesn't work any longer and often triggers a negative response in the candidate as opposed to that dialogue where you can come together and communicate. What behavioral scientists have found is that the least effective way to communicate is by declaring, by telling somebody they're going to do or telling somebody you're going to do. The next most effective way or more effective way to communicate is actually in having a little bit of debate, some back and forth questioning to uncover what's really at the root of the problem. But the most effective way to communicate is through dialogue that is based on asking questions. Now think about the last in-mail or the last email that you sent. Did you start with declaring that you have a wonderful opportunity or that their profile looks great and trying to flatter them? Or did you start with a question of trying to find out more about that candidate? Most of us, when we're taught to recruit, is actually to declare and then get frustrated when they don't respond to us, or when they do respond to us, they don't see the same position in the same light that we actually do. So what is really dialogue? Well, let's look at it this way. If we look at the 3 ways of communicating, number 1 being declare, that's I win. Number 2 being debate, that really means that you lose. And number 3, dialogue, that we win together. The reality of it, though, is that that's not natural for us. We are trained to win at the expense of losing. Now let's make it real simple and we'll put it into a mathematical formula. Win is a 1, lose is a 0. If I declare and I win, it's 1 times 0 equals 0. If we debate and you lose, it's 0 times 1 equals 0. The only solution under dialogue is 1 times 1 equals 1. It's the only one that actually has a positive result as opposed to the declaring and debating, which ends up most of the time in 0. This whole idea of open dialogue ultimately creates the situation where the candidate will listen to you, and if you ask the right questions, they'll actually get to a point where they answer those questions the way in which you want them if you ask the right questions. You know, most recruiters are focused on being average recruiters because they don't know how to be the trusted authority in recruiting. Using this concept of dialogue helps take you from the average recruiter that candidates are already cynical about to the superstar recruiter, increasing the chance of actually converting that candidate into somebody that you can actually engage with. So I hope this gives you some perspective of the difference in communication. What we're going to look at in next week's session is take this to the next level. How some of the traditional recruiting tactics that you and I both use continue to trigger a negative reaction, and how we actually, what tactics or tools that we use to get a positive reaction so we can open up and actually go through this idea of dialogue. See you next week.